Hey everybody, it's Lisa at Undermine Propaganda. It is Thursday, February 19th, and I am continuing to unlearn. And today we're going to talk about ICE again. I just have two articles discussing different topics associated with ICE. One thing I was thinking about is just the language that is used in propaganda, how specifically it is used to manufacture consent, to elicit emotions from people, to get them to go along with things that they might not otherwise go along with. Let's give you an example in this first article. I mean, what have we heard? The goal is to get out the worst of the worst, to deport human beings that are pedophiles, that are murderers, that are rapists, to get everyone's buy-in on how important of an endeavor this is. However, when you look at the numbers, that's where you see a problem. And in this article here about ICE, actual ICE detention numbers, and this was reported out by the ACLU by Melissa Golden, and it was reported last summer, July 12th, 2025. Let's see what's really going on under the propaganda. President Donald Trump has pledged to deport the worst of the worst. How many times have we heard that? Over and over and over again. He frequently speaks at public appearances about the countless dangerous criminals, among them murderers, rapists, and child predators. And I don't know anyone who would advocate for a child predator to be walking free amongst us in our neighborhoods, in our cities, in our schools. So this definitely elicits emotions and gets the buy-in. Well, if they're child predators, then they can't be here. He says, among them, murderers, rapists, and child predators from around the world, he, being Trump, says entered the U.S. illegally under the Biden administration. He promises to expel millions of migrants in the largest deportation program in American history to protect, another word that I can't stand, law-abiding citizens from violent threats that he says they pose. Protect the law-abiding citizens. It's just, it would be humorous if it wasn't so tragic. Who in our government is law-abiding? And it isn't that they have a speeding ticket. These people crush everyone below them. They rape. They molest. It's just a whole nother level of propaganda these days. Anyway, but government data around ongoing detentions tells a different story. Let's see. There has been an increase of arrests by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement since Trump began his second term, with reports of raids across the country. Like everything we're seeing in Minneapolis, they're protecting law-abiding citizens from all the fraud in Minneapolis, when actually nearly every move the Trump administration makes and everyone that works around him, including his family, is fraud. It's a way to fleece the American people and everyone around them. There are reports today with this Gaza deal that they have, that Trump is literally transferring $10 billion of the government's money in order to build this really disgusting Riviera on the graves of the children that we are responsible for killing. So yet another example. Yet the majority of people currently detained by ICE have no criminal convictions. Of those that do, relatively few have been convicted of high-level crimes, a stark contrast to the chilling nightmare Trump describes to support his border security agenda. And let's look at the actual numbers. The latest ICE statistic shows that as of June 29th, there were 57,861 people detained by ICE, 41,495, 71.7% whom had no criminal convictions. 71%. Each detainee is assigned a threat level by ICE on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the highest. Those without a criminal record are classified as having no ICE threat level. As of June 23rd, the latest data available, which I'm sure there's even more updated, but this is something that gives us an idea of what's going on. As of June 23rd, the latest data available, 84% of people detained, 84%. At 201 facilities nationwide were not given a threat level. Again, those without a criminal record are classified as having no threat level. As of June 23rd, 84% of people detained were not given a threat level. President Trump has justified this immigration agenda in part by making false claims that migrants are driving up violent crime in the United States. And that's simply not true, said Lauren Brooke Eisen, Senior Director of the Justice Program at the Brennan Center for Justice. Quote, "There's no research and evidence that supports his claims." I mean, it's just absolutely devastating. It's just absolutely devastating when you start to realize the truth of what's going on and just how, this manufactured reality that we live in. To add to this, there was an article that was absolutely devastating that actually highlights let's get that out of there for a second, that actually highlights the torture going on at these facilities where 71% of people have absolutely no criminal record. It's hard to even wrap your mind around about it. This was reported out by the ACLU on December 8, 2025, and updated January 26, 2026. Hattie Gassama, hopefully I said that right, wrote this article. Geraldo Lunas Campos spent months detained at Camp East, Montana, and El Paso, Texas, before he died in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody. His death has been ruled a homicide after reports that an officer choked him during an altercation. His case has renewed calls to close the remote detention camp, long criticized for dangerous conditions, and a rising toll of deaths. Now, they talk about long criticized, a detention camp long criticized. This isn't something new. This is something that has been going on for many administrations. It was Democrat, it was Republican, it was Obama, it was Trump, it was Biden, it was Bush. So this is a problem that we've had in our country for my entire life. And it's escalating. It's escalating to levels we've never seen. To go on with the article, earlier this year, the ACLU reported on abusive conditions at the largest immigration detention site in the country. Like Campos, officers beat up Samuel, a detained teenager who uses a pseudonym, so badly he had to go to the hospital. His right front tooth broke, and this is difficult. Trigger warning on this. And he said one officer, quote, grabbed my testicles and firmly crushed them, unquote. While another, quote, forced his fingers deep into my ears, unquote. He added that weeks after the beating, damage to his left ear was so severe that he now has trouble hearing. Samuels is just one of dozens of accounts of abuse from the immigration detention site at Fort Bliss military base in El Paso, Texas. These accounts reveal an unfolding humanitarian crisis at the military base, one which may spread across the country as the Trump administration expands detention dangerously, recklessly, and with unprecedented speed. And there's an article I went over the other day about the exorbitant amount of funds that was allocated to ICE, higher than any law enforcement agency in American history, but in American history. And $75 billion alone as a slush fund to do with what they want. And what is being reported is that they're using a lot of this money to build detention centers all over the country right now. These detention centers hold thousands and thousands of people and have very little oversight. And there is a profit motive to these private contractors that are getting these deals to build these detention centers, and they make money for every person that is detained. So there is an incentive there all around, from the government, from these private contractors, to imprison as many people as they can and to do it with the highest profit margin they can. So they're denied decent food, health care, and a number of things to make more profit, and because literally there are psychopaths within the administration that actually treat people, they don't see these people as people and justify the inhumane treatment that, for example, we just read about the young man, the teenager who was sexually assaulted and tortured by having his testicles crushed. I mean, it's barbaric. Human rights organizations, including the ACLU, sent a letter Monday to Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement detailing accounts of violent assaults and sexual abuse by officers. It also reveals details of other forms of intimidation used to pressure detained immigrants into self-deporting or agreeing to remove to third countries where they have no ties. These findings are based on interviews with more than 45 people currently held at Fort Bliss, and the letter includes 16 signed declarations by people detained at the facility. Tragically, Francisco Gaspar Andres, an immigrant from Guatemala, died of liver and kidney failure after he failed to receive appropriate medical care at Fort Bliss on December 3rd, 2025. I mean, it's just, and I'll have the links in these articles in the description if you want to go ahead and read through the entire article. It just lists human rights abuse after human rights abuse. And you know, we got to keep talking about this. I need to keep talking about this. And there's so much to talk about that sometimes I don't know which article to read, where to focus my attention, where to have a conversation with a friend about what I've recently seen, because there's so much darkness. But there are a lot of good people out there fighting, with much more courage than I have. They're using their platforms. I try to go to protests. I try to talk about the issues to anybody that I get in front of. As annoying as I'm sure I am to some people, I don't care, because there's so many people that just don't even know what's going on. So we got to keep fighting a good fight, however we find a way to use our voice, however small we may think our voice is. Like I said before, there are more of us than there are of them. So I hope everybody keeps fighting the good fight, and I will talk to everybody later. Bye.